Hello and welcome to part 2 of my Xbox collection. This is my absolutely disgusting original Xbox collection. I have more games for the original Xbox. I have not played all of them because I don't own an original Xbox. I only have the 360. Some of them are incompatible. Others are just similar to other games I've already played, so I haven't gotten around to them. The first and most obvious Xbox game I think ever is Halo. You know, this is a classic. It defined the multiplayer shooter genre in a pretty pivotal moment of time. I like that it has a shiny cover for the Game of the Year edition. The killer app of the Xbox, that's true. This game is surprisingly fun and colorful. I haven't played too much of it, but for a shooter, I got a lot out of it, and I can definitely see myself playing this more in the future, along with the sequels, of course. I really do think this game is unique. It has, I don't know, it has that Xbox vibe while still being, it's like the only lasting thing with that Xbox feeling. That's actually like stayed in the culture for longer than the run of maybe the 360. I do like it quite a bit. I don't know. It's a classic for a reason. Jet Set Radio Future, another beautiful looking cover. I mean, I guess the other one's more just fun that it's shiny, but this one is a game. I've played the original Jet Set Radio, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. I've not played this one because it's not compatible on 360 for whatever reason. This one seems to be a lot better designed. The first one, I love the style, love the gameplay concept, but it just gets frustrating with the physics and how demanding it can be at times. I love the fusion of platforming elements and sort of doing tricks and exploration. It's all of the stuff is there for an amazing game. In the first one, it didn't come together all the way, to be honest. When you first played, it's this electrifying experience with all this new, crazy stuff, but then you're playing one boring mission where you're trying to tag another team for hours, and you just want to stop playing video games forever. This one, I think, is an open world, a little bit more grounded color palette. It still looks really great for what it is, but yeah, I'm so happy to own this game. It's beautiful. Another game I love the style of, but I don't really like the gameplay is Amped. This was their snowboarding series. There's 3 of them, 2 on Xbox, 1 on Xbox 360. The reason I bought this game is because it has a kind of insane amount of emo music in it for what it is. Like, a shocking amount, and not just like, there's like stuff that's both like, well remembered today, and also obscure stuff that I'd never heard of that was interesting. I would not recommend playing this game because it's really clunky. It's just not a lot of fun. A few levels is okay. But there's a reason that they let you just go into the menu and play the radio, play the soundtrack, because that's the fun part of the game, just listen to all the different music. The game also has a bit of an attitude, a bit edgy for what it is. Yeah, I don't know, for $3, this is a pretty, treating it like a CD, it's a pretty great CD, 150 indie music tracks, that's what they call it. But we all know this shit is emo. They've also got punk stuff, and some original music, just like a whole ton of stuff. Reminds me of like the MTV, kind of music that you'd see in like the 2000s first, their, Clone High, undergrads, even Daria, just like these kind of weird, eclectic soundtracks of kind of underground music that maybe aren't completely fitting, but like you're just so glad that they're there and that this stuff is being appreciated. Yeah, Amped. Crimson Skies. This is another one that's a classic. A lot of people like this game today. Never got a real follow-up. I believe there's like a board game of some sort, or maybe a PC version. A dogfighting game. I have not played it. I think it's compatible on 360. I just haven't gotten around to it because I'm just not a huge fan of dogfighting games. I just felt like, this is the kind of game you see on Xbox everywhere. You gotta get it. It's a classic for what it is. It's one of those iconic Xbox games that's kind of stood the test of time. People still like it to this day. Yeah, I don't know. I like the conceit of the whole thing. I just am not a huge fan of flying games, I guess. Crazy Taxi 3. This one is not compatible on 360, so I haven't been able to actually play it. I love Crazy Taxi 1 and 2, though. Those are some of my favorite arcade games of all time. I mean, the first one's an arcade game, the second one isn't. This one is, not as good, but still a great game. Sega is supporting the Xbox quite a bit with a lot of really interesting, kind of, I guess, like, post-Dreamcast kind of titles. few entries in those series like Panzer Dragoon Orta and such. And it was just cool to see this kind of thing still be supported. I don't know why it wasn't given the backwards compatibility treatment. It would have been great, even on the new Xbox. The next few games, we have our Tony Hawk games. These are fun for what they are. I'm very bad at doing the tricks in them. It's not my favorite thing, but, these are pretty iconic pieces of video game history for what they are. They released a ton of these games. Most of them are pretty decent for what they are. I think people agree that Underground was like the peak, or, of this era at least. But, they're easy to find. They're on every console. They're just kind of great multi-plats that everyone has a fondness for, especially like Underground for like the character creator, and and it kind of had a cool like open world kind of feel. And this is the kind of game you can just play around with and just have fun. It doesn't really matter if you're doing the missions or anything. So I definitely see how a lot of kids who grew up with this game would still love it to this day. I guess to finish my discussion on the Xbox stuff, there are plenty of games I'm still looking for. Panzer Dragoon Orta is a big one. I just love Sega, and I want to follow the last glimmers of their greatness. Outrun 2006 is another awesome game that I think it's on Xbox. It's definitely on PS2, as well as Outrun 2, of course. For 360, I really want to get Minecraft. The 360 version of that one is, very iconic in a way. It's weird how it simultaneously represents the future of Minecraft, being owned by Microsoft, but also kind of the ultimate indie game, because indie games were, starting to be popular on 360 through their, Xbox 360 Arcade kind of initiative and all that. And to see a game be so popular based on that, it kind of feels historic in a way, even though it was on every console. Same with Plants vs. Zombies. Obviously not an indie game. EA and PopCap, huge companies. But, it was a fun console version of the game, and I feel like it represents that kind of fun, the American slant of the 360. Because to me, it's like one of the first consoles that had, like, some pretty heavy American support, where, Japanese video game industry was the big deal for the longest time, and it kind of started to wane, but Japanese developers were still making all the hit games in the PS2 era. But 360, you saw developers like 2K Boston and like Bethesda really take over as like the big studios to look up to, and Bungie, of course, and the continued successes from there. A lot of PC stuff was starting to go multi-plat on consoles. It was kind of like one of the first major times that the barriers between game consoles and like all the other forms of video games were kind of breaking down. And while it's debatable that that's a bad thing or a good thing, I think it's just interesting for the 360, and I feel like you can get a huge variety of different titles on it, and it's new enough to where it had those cutting edge features it needed to, but also old enough to where most of the stuff will still work. Maybe don't get the original Xbox 360 because that shit's a piece of garbage. But, of course there's online only games here and there, but most of them still have that, single player mindset in mind. Stupid sentence. That single player in mind, where it's like, okay, not everyone has online. Some, they're designing around CRTs still. It was a very transitionary console. Definitely went ahead, punched above its weight in a lot of ways. And that makes it really, remarkable, but also makes it kind of accessible in a way. And, kind of like the Wii, these games are still very cheap. They're everywhere. And, you're not always going to find good ones. If you like stuff like Call of Duty or Gears of War, that stuff is super easy to find nowadays. Assassin's Creed 2, like, these games still decent for what they are. I'm sure there's a reason they were popular back in the day and why they inspired such long-lasting franchises. Not my cup of tea. Maybe I'll own one of them one day if I get it for super cheap or in a bundle. But I think there's a little bit of something for everyone. And although a lot of the things it's done have been surpassed kind of objectively, there's still a bit of a charm in the Xbox 360 in a way. I don't know. I think it's a console that, I feel like its prevalence will make people kind of forget that it is actually pretty good. The same way that people kind of overlook the Genesis because it's the only thing Sega seems to be willing to support. There's a million Genesis collections, the Genesis Mini, Genesis on Virtual Console, Genesis on Nintendo Switch Online, Xbox 360s is kind of in a similar boat, where it's like Xbox 360 backwards compatibility, Xbox 360's Mega Bloks set, nostalgia, Red Ring of Death documentary. Like this kind of thing is like the brand because that's the one time they're successful. So it's going, they overinflate it in terms of like modern presence. So people don't have time to kind of get away from it and realize that, there really was something there that was a little bit interesting, a little bit unique, a little bit modern, but still a little bit in the past. It was what it was. Um, I guess I probably do have more to say about the Xbox landscape than I thought, but I think that's just a good place to cut the video. So thanks for watching. Sorry about this disgusting, disgusting video.